like folks to be able to do, especially if they are involved in FTZs and are members, and that is to get their member of Congress to tour an FTZ.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Folks, we're back for a special show for the Simply Trade podcast. We've got some great folks on. We got a wonderful panel that are some folks that have been longtime friends of ours. And it's this is a great organization that we're going to be talking about, Lalo, today. But this is one, too, that before we get too far into it, the conference season is upon us, and there's all kinds of activities going on, and we're going to be talking about meetings on the Hill, if you will, the legislative summit type things, and there's all kinds of folks doing things. But I think this is going to be a good show.
Well, this one in particular, yes. So we've been to conferences already that we've never even attended in the past, and they've been great. It's been opening up some doors for us, but with regards to this specific episode, we're going to focus on, like you said, the meetings that were held a couple of weeks ago from recording date today. So they were the legislative summit, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. But specifically, we have NAFTZ, the group from NAFTZ, that are going to summarize and talk to us about any cool or significant takeaways or conversations or maybe even gossip, who knows, what's going on over there, so what they're hearing kind of falls in line with our previous episode. We just had this episode last week where we had Lila Landis on the show, and she was talking about what to expect on this election year. So the election year, what would happen if Biden wins? What would happen if Trump wins? Kind of like her little predictions about that. So I know these are not predictions, what they were reviewing in DC, but, it kind of goes in line with that. I kind of like the way that's flowing. So anyway, so we do have the group, and I don't know, Andy, if you want to introduce them or bring them on.
All right. I will say this is that, folks, to our listeners in particular, I want you to really listen to this group. There are some legislative and regulatory things that they are pushing for that would create jobs in the U.S., and there are some things that need to be addressed regarding foreign trade zones. So now let me see if I get this right, National Association of Foreign Trade Zones. Do I have that right? Okay.
You do.
Well, all right.
Well
I
done.
screwed it
well
up
done.
last time. Okay. So we have, I guess your title is Executive Director. Is that right, Jeff?
It's president, but it's pretty much the same thing.
President of the NAFTZ is Jeff Taffel or Taffel?
Toffel. Rhymes with waffle. All that teasing in kindergarten pays off later in life.
Well, listen, folks, I'd screw up a 2-car parade and a 1-block route, so forgive me again for mispronouncing it. All right, so Jeff Toffel, and we have, one of my favorites, Shannon, and it's like Shannon Fura from Page and Fura in Chicago, and she is such a great friend. She and her husband are phenomenal attorneys, but she has been elected as chair of the board, right? Okay. All right, I've got that right. And then there is a new addition to the NAFTZ staff, but who has been somebody heavily involved for, I don't know how many years.
We don't have to say.
Melissa Ehrman. And look, Melissa and I had the privilege of working together on some past regulatory affairs efforts and whatnot, and is a good friend. So, Melissa, what is your role now with the NAFTZ? Okay.
There you go. We're going to keep practicing that, Andy.
Yeah, I know.
Just read her shirt. Read her shirt.
That's right.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
So my title is Director of Advocacy and Strategic Relations.
Okay, so still in that key regulatory affairs affecting change for the industry. Okay, so with that, let's start off, Jeff. You and your organization had an annual event scheduled here where you have a lot of members going to the Hill. I assume with both the House and the Senate side, whether you're dealing with the actual representatives and senators or the staffers. Why don't you talk a little bit of what transpired there?
Well, goodness, a lot transpired. We were really happy. We start off our conference with bringing everybody in for the conference portion of the 2 days where, we had the opportunity to hear directly from folks like USTR, CBP, and other agencies. And one of the sessions that I was really excited about is we had a panel of the folks that work on government relations from some of our, what we refer to as our sister associations. And so we can expand on that a little bit as we have our conversation, but those were some of the things that I really took away from the first day. And then new for us was the way we approached our Hill visits on the second day. We had a lot of the members that were there for first day hung around for the second day, so many so that we had 6 different teams on the Hill. And we had nearly 40 meetings in one day up on the Hill a couple of weeks ago. And I'll tell you what, I got to bed that night and I was like, why in the world does my body ache so much? And I looked at my phone. I had 35,000 steps that day. So I think that might have been the reason. So with all those meetings and like you were saying, on the House side, on the Senate side and all of that, we had a lot of great meetings with both the staffers and a couple of the groups. Teams had the opportunity to meet with a member of Congress as well. So that was terrific. And we'll touch on some of those talking points that we had here on a little bit.
How many people were, when you're saying you had 6 teams, so how many people were basically on your teams there, or how many were involved with those second day meetings?
I'm going to let Melissa correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our smallest group was 4 and our largest group was 6 or 7.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So they varied in size. We were trying to team folks up so that they could get to see their own home state representatives. So we were trying to, kind of group people together that had like constituents and share opportunities. Yeah.
So Melissa and Shannon were leading a couple of those groups, and I had the opportunity to sit in with all 6 groups for at least one meeting. I wanted to see how all the groups did, how their interactions were going, and I couldn't be more proud of our members, and especially given that for many of them, this was their first time doing something like this on the Hill, and especially leading a group on the Hill. And of course, there's always room for fine-tuning, but I think we did a great job and really showed in the feedback that we've received from some of those meetings already from the staffers.
Yeah, it was by far the highest amount of participation we've ever had in one of these events. That was really exciting. We were really happy to see that.
That right there, I was just going to say, is that's impressive, and I'm glad there seems to be an invigoration of NAFTZ membership then in getting more involvement. And I will say just generally, I won't say this as for NAFTZ itself, I'll let you make the comment, but I have seen things where trade associations too often have relied just on the leadership of the association or just a handful of folks. So it's like the good old boy or good old girl network that was always the same folks meeting these same things. And it was like they wanted to be the big fish in a small pond scenario where they're running things versus divide and conquer when a lot of work can get done when a little bit of work is done by a lot of people. So I salute you on getting a lot of folks involved there.
And I could not agree more. Andy, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. One of the things that we did when we came up with the theme for our legislative summit, it was let your impact be felt in Washington. And that's a theme that going forward, we're going to stick with, because the whole point is to really draw on our members and let members of Congress hear from the membership. This is an organization that historically has been more reactive, and that is not the association today. We're an association that crosses virtually every industry you can think of, from automotive to petroleum to textiles and apparel to retail. You pick an industry, and I think we're 800 members strong and growing, and it's important to make sure that we have our members engaged. And we have so many issues that are out there. But I think the other reason you're seeing the NAFTZ really come forward and be more prominent is also because this is a program that was created by Congress for purposes of promoting trade and U.S. jobs and U.S. economic prosperity, right? And historically, I think what you've seen now is people have morphed. They're wearing multiple hats within their organizations. I've talked about this before, just relative to trade in general. And I think what you're seeing is the NAFTZ is really fitting that bill for people who are dealing with import, export, supply chain security. And that's why you're seeing people really start to jump in and say, look, we really need to take part in this organization. And we want to hear from our members. That's what we're here for.
All right, so let's talk about this. Did you have the same agenda for all 6 teams and the same message for all 6, or were you trying to do a strategic thing here where you were focused on particular points in one area of the hill versus the other?
That's a great question, and I'll answer first and let Melissa jump in after that. But clearly as an association, there are issues that are affecting our membership right now that we want to drive home, right? So we certainly had talking points for the individuals who are going on the teams, but it's also recognizing the member of Congress that you're going to meet with, right, and understanding what's important to that member, and making sure that member understood what our message was and how it could fit within that particular member's message. I think that was the other point you raised earlier about it being an election year. Certainly that's something we're very cognizant of. But I think the important thing about this program and the message we want to get across is that this program, it doesn't matter who's in office, this program is creating U.S. jobs and economic prosperity, regardless of who happens to be in the White House. So that's another important thing for members of Congress to actually hear, how it can fit hand in glove with what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so we talked about, this was our largest amount of participation that we've had from our membership. Part of that, we were really excited to actually get our NAFTZ member in front of their congressional member to explain to them, what the program's about, how they use it. It was really important that more of those stories get told directly to the congresspeople as opposed to us filtering that, like you were talking about, Andy. So each group had a sort of a unique theme in terms of who they were speaking with and what kind of operations were happening in their state so that they could focus on the benefits particular to that district or that state. But then meanwhile, of course, we have our own associational priorities that we also wanted to talk with the members as well. Once they understood a little more about the program, we wanted to make sure we got that educational piece in first.
Like I said earlier, I have the opportunity to sit in with all the different teams, right? And so one thing that was very, very obvious is that the staffers were paying the most attention to the person from their district, right? And when that person is saying, here's the economic impact that the FTZ program is having on our state, on our town, that was what really drove our message home.
Well, one of the things, too, that comes into play, I mean, when you're hearing a constituent talk firsthand to say, this is what there's a benefit, or you're pushing an issue and it's like, this is the change we need and the support we need from you because, this job is going to, Canada or Mexico or some other country, and those kinds of issues. And it's like, you're losing out on this much tax revenue or on this kind of prosperity in this particular region. That does speak volumes to folks when they break it down to their own folks. So with that, what were the items? There's one in particular. It's just it's got a burr under my saddle and it has for years. But I'm before I pull that thing out, I want you to tell me what your agenda is there.
Well, I would say primarily one of the topics that we had biggest focus on is the amount of resource CBP has to support the program. And that goes across multiple items that we have on our agenda. But all of the teams were talking to the representatives about being able to acquire the CBP support that we need. Time after time, we're seeing places where the economic benefit of the program is just not getting met as much as it possibly could, simply because CBP doesn't have the resources in that area to support the program. So that was universally by far the biggest call to action that we had. That and inviting the representatives themselves to come out and actually visit an FTZ so that they could see the economic benefit of the program to their area. So that was the top agenda item for all of the groups, no matter who they were speaking with. We want to make sure we drove home that point.
Okay. Excellent. So what about, are there any items in particular? I mean, obviously the resource issue that's going to be predominantly on the House side with the budget committee and the House Ways and Means. Yeah. Appropriations. That's the word I was looking for. I was like, okay. With that though, is that obviously the resources have been diverted for many different things. Not only, obviously the southern border is a big deal. Now the northern borders become more prevalent. And so as resources are diverted from there, then there's other resources that are being diverted to other parts of CBP to help compensate for it. And from what I understand, there's FTZs that are pending review, that are new ones. They're trying to get up and running, can't because nobody's there to review it, or even just the support in the day in and day out of the FTZ. So I can imagine CBP is going crazy on it. Visiting the FTZs, I think, is fantastic. Are there any legislative things that need to be looked at?
Well, I think we all know that we've been for a long time looking for a few parity items, we're calling it. One in particular, I know you may have talked about this a little bit on your show about forced labor. People may not know this, but FTZs, regulatorily speaking, are able to store goods suspected of inadmissibility. That includes things like forced labor or UFLPA products. So again, these are items suspected. While the research is being done, they need to go somewhere, and FTZs are legally able to store those products. However, CBP, due to different resource constraints, have asked that we stop being able to do that. And that's been a big impact on our members and something that we talk to our congressional members about. That's one of the examples of where lack of resources is preventing us from doing what we need to do in our day-to-day operations in FTZs. That's not so much legislative, though, by the way. You started by asking that, but I just wanted to give that as an example of one of our key support items when we're up there talking about CBP resource funding.
Well, and I have to, I guess, let's stop for a second on that, is that I can see where they would want to store it's what's the term there, Lala? Presumable,
rebuttable consumption. Yes.
Like I said, I'd screw it up here real quick. All
That's
right,
what I'm here for.
Yeah. Basically, which just basically says, that's basically 3 times here. It's assumed that the goods were manufactured with forced labor until proven otherwise. And sometimes with the paperwork and the things that are needed, I can see where an FTZ would be phenomenal. What I don't understand is why in the Sam Hill would CBP want to say stop storing them? Because they don't want to deal with it?
That's precisely our question. Precisely
Did you get
our
an
question.
answer?
Well, that's an interesting point that you raised. Did we get an answer? And, recognize the association worked very hard with CBP headquarters when the WRO process was put in place. We worked with CBP headquarters to put in place a process where this could be done, right? And that was in place for, correct me if I'm wrong, like about approximately 2 years. This past August, the wool got pulled out from under us, or the rug got pulled out from under us, however you want to say it. And CBP did not discuss with the trade and reverse that position. And our immediate response was, why? This is a program, that's put in place that is high security, your trusted partners that you have, double agency oversight. And CBP has said multiple things. Some has been a resource issue. Some has been a misconception about what the program is. We've heard customs in various forums say, well, we don't have the manpower to post someone at FTZ. Well, that's great because you don't need to do that. You don't do that today. You have customs has wanted to push bonded warehouses as being the solution. That's not the solution. First of all, the foreign trade zone program is much more secure. And so, that is obviously our response back. That's an ongoing dialogue that we're having with CBP headquarters. That's something we actually talked about during the legislative summit with CBP headquarters, and we're going to be continuing that dialogue with them to get that position reversed. And honestly, to Melissa's point, this is something we're already able to do based on the regulations. So that's another aspect that CBP has not addressed. So we're going to be working with them very closely coming out of legislative summit to, again, address this issue.
And that is a bureaucratic issue because it's already done. The CBP is the one making the call on that, and I can see we're gaining some support from the Hill for inquiries on that. It's like, are you nuts? It's like, you don't want to just turn this stuff loose, and you don't want to penalize the good importers that are bringing this stuff in, and it's valid, but then they'll seize it under the guise of forced labor when in fact it's not. I get it. So there's that. But let's go back now as far as the action. I guess one of the things that I'm looking for is what about the allowance of 321s out of an FTZ?
I kind of figured that was where you were going, Andy.
Yeah. I was just waiting on it. It's like, I'm telling you what, that is one that I think it was good in many aspects to raise the de minimis because it unclogged the customs systems with thousands and thousands, tens of thousands per day of these small entries. And brokers don't really make money off those small entries and all that. And yet, it has now become this loophole of some things where people are, in a sense, trying to circumvent some things. Basically, though, not allowing a Section 321 out of an FTZ has created an industry in Canada in particular, but all over the world, especially out of China and out of other countries, where they'll ship these less than $800 shipments directly to consumers in the U.S. And it has now circumvented a lot of things where the jobs basically are going to foreign countries versus here in the U.S. What about that?
So your listeners may or may not know that, of course, a U.S. FTZ is actually an island within U.S. commerce. And so you bring product in from foreign sources and from domestic sources as well, store them in the FTZ, and then you ship as needed to your customers. So whereas a warehouse in, say, Canada or Mexico can ship shipments directly, e-commerce in particular, low value shipments using de minimis, an FTZ doing the exact same transaction cannot utilize the de minimis entry procedures. And so it has put U.S. companies at a disadvantage. And I think, it was inadvertent, frankly, right? The wording of these acts are very, very old. It was an unintended consequence. I think we have support on the Hill from that perspective. There are people who recognize the fact that it was an unintended consequence, but it does take legislative action to correct. And so when we were in an office that has been involved in the de minimis issue, and I have to say, the more we've been working on this problem, which has been quite some time, more offices are more familiar with de minimis. Yeah. It used to be that we had to go into each office and explain what de minimis is. Then we had to explain what an FTZ is. Now we're having to explain what they technically need to do to correct this inadvertent mishap. But we have offices that are, that are definitely listening. Now I think because we have gotten over those educational hurdles. And so we had positive reception. We're anxious and hopeful. We got to see some trade legislation come out this year. And so we're definitely going to keep an eye out for opportunities. But it has been a long road.
Yeah, let me press that a little bit. So, I personally believe our CBP has basically said it's going to take a legislative change to allow FTZs to utilize Section 321s. Personally, I don't see that. I think that's a misinterpretation of the regs or kind of a far stretch. Saying that, it is what it is. So it's according to customs, they're not going to budge on this issue that has, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on it over the years, until there's a law that's passed. So with that, is there any bill that has this in it now, or is this something that you guys are working on to draft up to submit?
Well, we've been working on language for quite some time. We're looking for opportunities and folks that will sponsor that language. Like you said, I mean, it's going to take a legislative vehicle. We'll just have to see what kind of trade areas that Congress is willing to watch out for. You know, we're basically running up to July, right? We have from now until July, and then everything's going to shut down, and election time is going to really kick in full force. So I'm just looking down at my clock going, yeah, I got about 4 months. We'll see what we can come up with.
I just want to say and address to our listeners and hopefully members of NAFTZ and following up with your legislative offices there in your home states and at the federal levels. This is something that y'all need to be pushing for. And quite frankly, anybody that does not take this up is just, you're giving jobs away. You have turned a blind eye to it. Get off your duff and do something about it and sponsor a bill. Oh, my God.
Well, and Andy, as long as you've opened that door for me for a little plug. So if you are hearing this and you're saying, absolutely, I want to talk to my representative or my congressman person about this, and you'd like talking points or information or that language that I mentioned, please feel free to contact us at NAFTZ. We'd be happy to equip you with all those tools to take to your representatives.
And we're going to have the contact information on our show notes here, as well as you can reach out to Lalo or myself. I guarantee you we will get you to the right folks. This is one of those things that I'm telling you, honestly, it makes me madder than a wet hen. It just drives me nuts. It's like, come on, folks, you can do this and create jobs. And it would be such a positive, and it ought to be a bipartisan thing. I mean, Shannon, you mentioned that who cares who's in the White House? This ought to be something that is good for the U.S. So, okay. With that said, now, what are there out of your 6 teams, your meetings, your 2 days of on the conference and meetings and whatnot? What's your takeaway here? What other actions, other than kind of what we're talking about here, is following up? But what actions are you looking for from people?
What actions are we looking for from people in terms of members and the general public, or people on the Hill?
Well, I mean, I guess on the Hill, I mean, if you've got something specific in there, I guarantee you I'll part somebody's hair with a hatchet and say, this is what you need to be looking at and do. If it's something that is with your own membership to follow through, I think you have probably, and I'm assuming this, is you've had some good meetings and hopefully had a scenario where you're trying to influence people to take action. But I think it would, in a better question here was, what is the action you need from your members and those listening in the audience that may not be members, that to try and push these issues forward to those same people you met on the Hill?
Well, I would say one of the first things that we would like folks to be able to do, especially if they are involved in FTZs and are members, and that is to get their member of Congress to tour an FTZ. I think that is probably the number one thing that we would love to see out of this, because for those members of Congress that have done so, it's like eyes are now wide open, and they kind of sound like you a little bit, Andy. It's like, why are we doing this, right? It's kind of like, this makes sense, but they've got to see it to believe it, kind of thing, because it's not an easy thing to grasp. But when you see it, it is. And then you also see the jobs, you see the products, you see what's happening. And to realize that some of this stuff is at jeopardy because of some of these issues, I think that would be my number one thing that we would like folks to take away from this. After the member of Congress has that eye-opening experience, they want to help, then it kind of goes back to what is their position on different trade issues. And then we certainly would want to find those issues that are most meaningful to them, that resonate with them, and then we can work together to see what we can do. And that's kind of some of the results that we're seeing in the feedback we're getting from those meetings that we had a couple of weeks ago. There's been feedback that's gone back to Melissa and our government relations firm, tell us more. We're kind of, you've piqued our interest. So tell us more about whether it's our USMCA issue or it's de minimis or CBP appropriations. We tried to touch on most of them because you just never know what is going to resonate with that member of Congress and their staff.
And frankly, some are easier fixes than others, right? So that's the other message is when we're talking to the members on the Hill, it's staying in front of them, right? Staying in front of them and showing them how they can help. If it's, a small fix or is it something that's going to take a little bit more effort, whatever the case may be. So, coming out of Legislative Summit, our mission with our follow-ups is to not let the issues drop. And we have additional fly-ins that we're going to do for our membership. For those who are not members, make sure they jump on board. And I think that's the other thing that we really want to take out of this. The other thing we actually did this year with our Legislative Summit, while I'm mentioning it, is that we co-located our fundamentals course. So people who are new to the program and getting involved in foreign trade zones, we were able to co-locate that conference in DC with our Legislative Summit. So they also had the opportunity to engage with veteran people within the program. So it gave them a nice place to, It gave them a nice place to meet some additional members, meet other people in the program. We had new members brought on because of it. And then, certainly from a social media perspective, making sure people saw the teams that we had on the Hill and making sure they understood our issues because, we do want them to understand that we are absolutely engaged, we are proactive, and we are pushing these issues for the benefit of our membership and the U.S.
Yeah, I think that awareness is a big piece of it too, right? Because we never know what the next topic is going to be that might pop up. And so from a call to action, we really are hitting home the importance of the education. Somebody described it to me today. A lot of folks on the Hill talk about trade and literally they're thinking about the port process, right? The getting the product off the ship through the port process onto a truck. And then that's pretty much where their visibility has ended. Our program takes that even beyond and shows what kind of economic benefit happens after you get it off that ship and out of that port. And that's why it's really important for those representatives to see that in action.
Well, one of the things let me say this is that, folks, if you've heard of FTZs, a lot of people call them wrongly here is free trade zone. It's a foreign trade zone, as Melissa indicated. It's like a foreign island in the midst of the U.S. So you have this bonded facility, a bonded warehouse, if you will, in most cases, that is considered, if it's on U.S. soil, but it's considered a foreign land. With that means that the goods that are going in there that are not cleared into the U.S. commerce, they can be in there. The point being is they're not cleared into the U.S. commerce. So the beauty of this with the supply chain disruptions, we've had the Russia-Ukraine war. We've got the Israel-Gaza situation. We've got the Red Sea going on. We've got the China-Taiwan geopolitical scenarios going on. And you've got the Panama Canal. It's got a drought, and it's reduced the frequency of vessels through there. People are having to go through the Cape of South Africa as well as South America in trying to deal with all this. The point is that now companies are having to gain or get larger inventories as they're coming in. And the beauty of an FTZ is it's going to help manage the cash flow because, yes, all right, here comes the physical inventory. It goes in. You're not clearing it into the commerce until you're ready to sell it, and off it goes. So it's fantastic from that perspective. All said and done, I will just come back around again and look at this to say, as far as what you're looking at, folks, get involved. Don't sit there and look at this and go, I wonder what I should do. If you need some guidance on these kinds of issues and they seem to be of interest to you, if you yourself are not involved in any kind of regulatory affairs, get with your company that has regulatory affairs folks involved. They're probably more involved in, on the street issues, manufacturing issues, whatever. But this is just another aspect. And reach out to NAFTZ and they'll give you some guidance on what you need to do. Does that sound pretty good for everybody?
It does. And Andy, just if I could add one more thing to what you just said, when you're talking about this, you just said, manufacturing those, recognize that this program is open up to manufacturing and distribution. And when you hear the buzz terms in today's world of reshoring, friendshoring, nearshoring, the FTZ program fits right into that. And you got to recognize that when you have manufacturing operations that are based in the United States, that are a foreign trade zone, you have a hub and spoke system, right? You have the manufacturing operation, and then you have the operations that support that manufacturing. I talk with my hands, the manufacturing operation that supports that. And then you have all the other ancillary services. So recognize all of those jobs and all of that investment is here. So that's something you want to promote. And you want to make sure, as we're looking at, to your point, as people are de-risking from China, or as you're looking at reimagining your supply chains, we're trying to bring all that here and bring that closer. So this is a program that fits hand in glove with doing that.
All right, Melissa, let me, as we need to kind of wrap this up here, let me start with you and ask if there's any other items that you want to raise up or actions that you would like to ask for our listeners here to take.
Well, I think that we hit the big one, and I think the important thing is it's not as scary as some folks might think to interact in this process. You mentioned earlier, Andy, that in the past, perhaps in some associations, it's been limited to a smaller group of individuals. I just can't stress how important it is that the actual members, the constituents for these folks, are talking directly to them. And so if you have any reservations or any hesitations about that, or just want to talk to somebody and get an idea of what is it like and what are they going to ask me and how do I get ready, that kind of stuff. This year, for the first time, we actually did prep sessions before we went on the Hill, where we actually had a staff member, an actual congressional staff member, come and speak to our group about, when somebody walks in my door, this is how I like things to work. This is really helpful for me. This is how to present things to me so that I'll remember them after you leave. I thought that was hugely helpful. So we have a lot of tools now to help folks get comfortable with the process and be ready to participate. So it's really exciting, and I'm anxious to see more people get involved in the process.
I love it. Shannon, how about you, from your perspective as the chair, and what would you like to bring?
I just dovetailing onto Melissa, I think as chair, my job is to hear from you, right? It's whether they're members or non-members. That's my job. That's our board's job. That's our executive committee's job. And to Melissa's point, we have worked very hard to look at our committees and our advocacy structure. And we're, again, being very proactive. And so if you have issues that you're seeing, bring those to us. That's our job as your association. And that's our job in trade, right? Our goal is to help people facilitate legitimate trade and to make sure we keep those jobs here in the U.S. So that would be my thing, is let me hear from you.
And let me say, folks, again, both of these ladies are phenomenal in that. And I have had the privilege of being able to debate issues with both of them. And let me tell you, you better have your ducks in a row, because but it's always, 1, you're listening. 2, you're not afraid to push back. 3, I'm not afraid to push back. But we always wound up with something on a positive on an issue, and it's like, okay, let's hammer it out. So, Jeff, to you, my friend. So as you're trying to herd cats with the whole thing here and whatnot, how about you in closing?
I'm so glad you were talking about people getting involved, Andy, because and when you're herding cats and all that for an association, one of the things that you want to do is you want to recognize and acknowledge those members that are doing those things that you're asking them to do and doing it really, really well. So at this particular conference every year, we award what's called the Homer Maxey Award. Homer Maxey was one of the very, very early leaders of this association and the grantee for the Hawaii FTZ. And so this award is named in his honor for the member that has really gone above and beyond and done all of those advocacy things that we love to see and really put their whole selves into it. So this year we awarded Christopher Smith. Chris is with IKEA. I would imagine Andy and Lalo, you guys have probably run into Chris in all the things that you guys are out there doing. And so we were very honored to have that award presented to him. Our advocacy committee reviewed all of the nominations that came in, and we had a great, what did we have, Melissa? 10, 12 nominations of folks, that are, have been very, very much involved in advocacy for the association. And so I was glad that, again, that we co-located the conference and that our newer folks to the FTZ world had that opportunity to see that. And then, unfortunately, at this conference, we also recognized a member that passed that we lost way too early. Angie Atwood was the grantee of the Columbus area zones and passed away unexpectedly back in December, shortly before the Christmas holidays. And we awarded her the Lifetime Achievement Award. Usually this would have been presented at our annual conference, but we wanted to do it at legislative because this was her passion. This was her calling. This was so special to her. And we referenced how, for many, many years, we've been having this at the Madison Hotel in D.C. here. And she would hold court, as Shannon called it.
And she was the very first winner of the Homer Maxey Award, actually.
Well, I will say Angie has been one that's been heavily involved, and I'm sorry I was not aware that she had passed away. So, folks, that's one to, condolences to her family and to the organization there as well for the loss. So that's a big loss. But
and Andy, you will appreciate this. We actually had them here. Her family actually came in to the Legislative Summit for the award, which was really special.
As well as her boss and her boss's boss from the Columbus Airport Authority.
Well, I mean, and y'all are such a class act. I tell you, that speaks volumes for y'all, and that's great. And that is, I'm sure they were humbled by such an honor. So that's fantastic. Speaking of your annual conference, when is your annual conference coming up?
So annual conference is the second week of September, depending on how you count the first week. So I want to say the 8th through the 12th. I hope I got the dates right. And we're going off the top of my head there, which is always a dangerous thing to do, as in New Orleans. And we're going to be at the Sheraton right there on Canal, which is just wrapping up a bunch of upgrades to the common areas. So we're looking forward to seeing that right across the street from the French Quarter. But most importantly, our program committee has been working really hard already on the topics for the annual conference. We're going to have a great lineup of education like we always do. All of our exhibitors will be there. We're hoping to have some new ones this year. Promises to be one of our most attended conferences in many, many years. And so, COVID getting in the way of things like all of that. But we're really excited to be in New Orleans. New Orleans is always a great place to go for a conference. So we hope to see a bunch of folks in New Orleans in September.
Well, folks, as you're looking at it again, if you have any interest in an FTZ, I would say, one, you need to check out NAFTZ as far as an organization. You're going to get more resources than you could shake a stick at, as well as just asking questions. If you have questions on it and need some help, there are a lot of folks that could answer a lot of questions. There are some phenomenal consultants. I'm a big proponent. Get your experts in. And they can guide you along. It is a laborious situation to set one up, but if you've got the right experts, you can hopefully cut through some of the bureaucracy like grease lightning. But we still need resources, so we need resources from CBP, and that comes back to the scenario of getting enough pressure and becoming a squeaky wheel. The other thing is we've talked about. Get your congressman out there, whether you're involved in an FTZ or not. Get your congressmen and your senators to come by and have a visit. Talk to your local folks, be it the Chamber of Commerce, be it anybody that's in an area that has FTZs. You need to do a collaborative effort to pull them in to say, not only here's the FTZ, but what would it mean economically if you could get some of these legislative things pushed through and regulatory things pushed through. And finally, I guess is that make plans to attend the annual conference in New Orleans, whether you're a member or not. Now, if you want to be a member, the other thing is NAFTZ.org. Is that correct?
It is.
I ate my smart pills today. Okay. Y'all are, I'm telling you, every one of y'all are just phenomenal. And Lalo and I are so appreciative of y'all. And I'm looking forward to seeing some more results. And I would assume between now being March and September that there will be some regulatory and bureaucratic updates and all that on what's going on. So, but
we hope
for
so
your
too.
conference, right? Yep. So. But with that, thank you for joining us. And folks, we're going to turn this back over to you. And thank you so much again for just holding together such a great organization. Y'all are great.
Appreciate
Andy,
your
thanks
time
so
today.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at SimplyTradePod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.